Journalism is seeking the truth and telling it, and there is nothing more to it, is there? Well, it sounds easy, right? Well, you'd better roll up your sleeves, because they're putting your skills in practice. It's not that simple. You have to dig a lot, you have to find proof, link evidence, and then get a newspaper to publish your story about the next big scandal out there. So, if you want to make a name for yourself in this business, you won't cut it with chronicles of desperate pet owners and the litty Kit Kat stories. So, get out there if you want to dig a new scandal and get your name on the front line. You're going to have to dig up a real news story, a jaw-dropping scandal that is. There's a lot of murky business going on out there, and guess who's behind it all? Celebrities. Yeah, that's right. And they got dirty laundry they're hiding. You don't get out there, you're not going to find any useful hints and clues to follow your story. So it is suspiciously old and suspiciously rumored that Amy Albright is concealing some hidden interests, isn't it? Or was she simply forgotten about the journalism of code of ethics? Weren't you surprised when Ed Enfield was elected governor despite his dark past? Yeah. Could it be true that Ike Interman takes the charity start with oneself a little too serious, if you ask me, for his fundraisers? Do you really believe Owen Orlonsky would continue being the MVP if it weren't for his supplements before each game? Haven't you ever wondered why Dr. Unwin is always on the front line, publishing extraordinary findings, but where is the evidence to back all this? And guess what? They are not acting alone. If they are at the center of these scandals, that's due to their contacts. They have access to the right people, an acquaintance who is eager to deal with the authorities, a lover in a position of power, ready to turn a blind eye, and a friend who's willing to cover up compromising details. In a very convenient place, that is. If you pay close attention to the social circles that they're attending, you'll find out a lot on what they're up to. Oh, and don't think that you're done when you have tied all those loose ends. You're still going to need someone to publish your story. Keep in mind that many of the papers and gossip rags won't dare to defame the celebrities they owe favors to. So it will be very difficult to pinpoint the right newspaper to publish your scandal story as well. Now get out there and search every single corner of the city, and don't come back if you don't find anything as big as a scandal. So ScandalOh is the next big game from Megacorping Games. They brought us Awkward Guest. This was a brilliant deduction, a murder-solving mystery game where you were using clues in order to determine who has performed the murder. In this game, the theme is going a step further. We're talking about scandals from a circle of celebrities that are using some specific network of contacts to provide them with the necessary resources in order to perform those scandals and perform those deeds that they bring them money, fame, power, you name it. Now Megacorping is having this game on Kickstarter. You can follow down below in the description the link to their Kickstarter page to find out more. But already I'm telling you that this is a step further from the magnificent Awkward Guest that we really enjoyed. Has a lot of things to offer, a lot of logical thinking, assumption and conclusions that you need to put all of them together under a beautiful theme of finding and tying all loose ends in order to pinpoint the latest scandal to your story, to the celebrity, and have a newspaper to write it and publish it. So let's see how the game plays. Join me at the table. I'll show you the rules about the game, present you all the components and the philosophy, and then we'll come back at the end of this video for a final wrap-up on the game. ScandalOh is a deduction card game of investigative journalism in which you'll compete to unravel the next big scandal involving a celebrity. It uses a brilliant deck system that we have seen in Awkward Guess, and it's a brilliant deduction and logical thinking game. Each game presents you with a completely different challenge thanks to its brilliant deck mechanism, and it can generate thousands of different scenarios of varying complexity. To get the scoop, you'll have to get out and gather information from which to draw logical conclusions. Will you get the exclusive on the next big scandal? What story will the scandal unearth? Who is a celebrity embroiled in this murky affair? Which newspaper will be willing to publish your scoop? If you want to get to the bottom of this, you'll have to walk the city streets in search of evidence, check in with your informants, visit the different newspaper agencies, and investigate the celebrities and their contacts. The cards contained in each game deck will provide you with the crucial Scandal-specific information that will help you infer with elements in your tracking pad and be involved in the Scandal solution yourself. During the game, you'll be able to exchange cards with your colleagues to discover the new information, but don't forget that they'll do whatever they can in order to be the ones to take the exclusiveness away from you. So here are the components of ScandalOh. ScandalOh is a brand new game hitting Kickstarter. It uses ideas and systems implemented in Awkward Guest that we loved, and an excellent game so far. So what you see in front of you, the game comes with 250 game cards numbered from 1 to 250. They have different color backs, but just in order to be able to find a specific card easier. Other than that, all the cards are the same, and a specific selection of those cards is being used each time during each game. You get one newspaper dispenser for the discard pile, that's this one. Of course, you get one notebook with tracking sheets, one starting player marker, 6 scandal solving tokens used by players in order to solve the scandal once they have sufficient information, 6 player screens that you see here, and they're very nicely done because they also have lots of useful information. We'll come back to the screens, and they also used to hide your tracking sheet there, so you can keep the information away from the envious eyes of your opponents seeking for the exclusiveness, of course. Then you have 12 offer tokens, 1 inquiry board, 3 inquiry tokens, and the rulebook. There are a lot of different tracking sheets for you to use during your investigation, but of course you can print out more, always the same like with the Awkward Guests. So let's have a closer look to the components to get behind the understanding of the game and how it works. So starting with the ScandalOh cards. This is one of the cards, and this is the back of the cards, as we have seen. The number here on the top left, in this case 1, in this card, is the value of the card. It represents the amount of valuable information that it contains. It can either be 1 or 2. Here, on the bottom right, this space shows the information on the card and how to record it on the tracking sheet. So all this is the information that you'll find here. Of course, on the top right, we have some letters. These are the card references. They refer to the characters, the newspapers, and the city locations that the card information is related to. All this will make more sense once we start explaining the game. But this is a typical example of one of those cards. The ScandalOh cards, as you can see the back of the deck, of one card specifically, the 251, are arranged into 5 different types that can be identified by their backs. The different images on their backs have no effect in the game, but will help you sort the cards quickly when putting the game away, but also locate a card quickly when you want to pre-construct the deck for the scenario that you're playing. Each card is identified by the number on its back. In this case, it's 250. And you can see it in both edges of the card. You can see the 5 decks, 1 to 50, 51 to 100, 101 to 150, 151 to 200, and 200 to 250. Once the game starts, it's going to be only 1 deck in the game, so this is just for demonstrating the different backs for your convenience. Now, let's have a closer look on the ScandalOh tracking sheet. This is a ScandalOh tracking sheet that it will help you mark the information you received during the game and access all the information you have at any time during the game at your hand. Basically, it's divided into 3 areas. We have stories, which are on the top. You can see them, all this area are stories. Then you have the connections, which are here, in the lower part. All of these are connections. And then we have the newspapers, which is the last row with the 4 newspapers at the bottom. The stories area is where you'll keep track of the information that will help you determine which story is the correct one. And that's here, as I said before. Whether the connection area shows the contacts that each celebrity has access to and will help you determine who is part of the Scandal's network of contacts. Finally, the newspapers, that you can see some of them here, is where you'll keep track of what stories and celebrities each newspaper is interested in publishing. Again, this is the top part, and you can see the stories all laid out here in front of you. ScandalOh starts with 16 possible initial stories, but only one matches the chosen scandal. The information related to each story is displayed in a box like this. So let's focus on this box here, only for this one. This is one story, for example, with all the information listed and all the icons associated with it. The breakdown is the following. These icons here, those three ones, are the three resources required to the story. The central illustration and the number are specific to the story, and you can find the illustration here, and this is the triangle and the number which are specific to the story. The story type is represented by a distinctive icon and background color. You see, we have different colors for stories. There are two claims, you see the numbers 1, 2, next to each of the resources, associated with each resource that point to the possible involvement in the story. As you find these claims here, you will circle the corresponding number next to the resource. There is a section for each story with the initials of the celebrities, who you can find that they are in the center of the scandal. We'll come back to all this information, but you can see that this is the first name from the initial of each celebrity, and it's unique, so there is no confusion at all. In general, there are a total of 8 different resources that have to do with power, brain, which is this one, authority, which is this one, concealment, coercion, cover, partnership, and last but not least, relationships. There are 4 different types of stories in ScandalOh. The triangle refers to the criminal stories and the background is red. The square refers to the professional stories and the background is blue. The circle refers to personal stories and the background is pink. And last, this is the icon for moral stories and the background is purple. So 4 different types of stories. Each is a unique and a total of 16. So that's the breakdown of the stories. Now in the second portion we have the connections. Connections are very useful for the celebrities because they help them provide them with the resources they need in order to be involved in the specific scandal. So that's what you're trying to break down, what's what. This is the lower part of your tracking sheet and you can find different information. The celebrities are represented distinctively in the connections area and their initials are the vowels. So for example, you have Ed Enfield here, this is one of the celebrities. You have Amy Albright here, the second celebrity. You have Uma Unwin, the third one. Owen Orlowski, the fourth one. And then you have Ike Intelman, the fifth one. And you can see now all these numbers that they're initials from the different type of celebrities. A stands for Amy, E stands for Ed, I stands for Ike, O stands for Owen, and U stands for the initial of Uma. The contacts, like this one for example, Kate King, that you see here, be aware that they are very different from the illustration from the celebrities. This is a celebrity, this is a contact, this is a contact, this is a celebrity. So the contacts are the characters that can provide the celebrities with the resources required by the story. They are represented like this on the tracking sheet and their initials are all consonants. K, for example, for Kate King. Berenice Berwick, Jill Jarrett, etc. Now these ties here, for example, you see there are some ties like threads connecting different people together, show that two characters might have a direct connection. You have the contact name, that's always in the middle of a contact. Then you have on the left the different logos of the newspapers. There are 4 newspapers, we're going to break them down in a bit, and this is the logo of each of those, from left to right and top to bottom. These are the first one, which is the Global Sentinel. Then you have the Liberty Gazette, the Patriot Daily, and the Chronicle, which is the one with the feather. Also, when a contact is not part of a network of a certain celebrity, you can cross out the initials of that celebrity here. So this is why you have all 5 initials there, because if, for example, a contact is not part of the network of a celebrity, you can cross that celebrity out in the boxes below. And finally, you can see that each contact has resources icons. These are the resources that the contact can provide the celebrities when they are connected to in their network. Finally, here you can see the icons in those black spots for the 5 city locations that you can investigate. When you visit them, in addition to information about the contacts that frequent them, you will also discover things that wouldn't be elsewhere. Each contact likes to frequent 2 of the city locations, and you have to check your player screen to find out these ones. This is the back of your player screen, by the way. And when you research a location, you can find information about the contacts who frequent it, of course. Keep in mind that each of the contacts favors 2 locations. So for example, let's say Fred Fuchs, if I'm pronouncing correctly, starts with an F. That means you can find the F contact only in 2 of those locations. There is no F here, no F here, no F here, only in this location of the city and in that location of the city. And this is how the location icons work. As I mentioned earlier, we have 4 newspapers. We have the Global Sentinel, the Liberty Gazette, the Patriot Daily, and the Chronicle. And the breakdown is the following. First of all, you have the name of the newspaper. Within the name, you can see the logo. So these are the 4 logos I remind you, and you can find the Global Sentinel logo, for example, the first one. The second one is the Liberty Gazette, it's here. The third one is the Patriot Daily, and the last one is the Chronicle with the feather, and you can find it there. This is where you will discard the types of stories for the newspaper that it's not interested in publishing them. You see, this is each of the 4 categories. Again, I remind you, we have those categories here with different shape icons and different colors. And here you will, of course, use this area to cross out the stories, the type of stories that the newspaper is not interested in publishing. For example, if they're not interested in publishing criminal stories, you'll cross out this triangle for the Global Sentinel, and the rest will be similar for the rest. There are 3 possible claims that point to the newspaper's willingness to publish a story. As you find these claims, circle the corresponding numbers here. You see, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And finally, this is the area over here, which are the initials for the celebrities again, under each of those newspaper boxes, that you find a track of the celebrities each newspaper is interested in publishing stories about. So you need to circle the correct one in order to provide part of the final solution if you wish to do so. So this is a ScandalOh player screen. This is a ScandalOh player screen, and its function is, of course, first of all, to keep the information hidden from the eyes of your curious colleagues. It has a lot of different useful information at the back, and has a lot of quick reference guide. So this is the front of it. This is one side. This is the other side. And this is what you'll see when you put it in front of your pad like that. First of all, to prevent the people across and next to you to see what you're noting. And second of all, to provide a lot of useful information as quick reference within one of those we have seen here before. So let's see the breakdown. Here's an example of a game solution that you can find here. It's a way to make you quickly remember and understand how you can provide a solution. For example, a possible network of contacts associated with the solution. Here are the questions that you'll need to answer in order to win the game. For example, the story, the celebrity, and the newspaper that is willing to publish the story. Here we have seen those 5 boxes are the location boxes. The location boxes, of course, show the contacts and the information that can be found on each location, respectively. This box here shows the list of contacts that can provide each of the 8 resources. So if you're looking specifically for authority, you know that those 3 contacts are the ones that they can provide it, if it's part of the scandal that you're trying to unravel. And of course, this is an example, shows the celebrity networks of contacts based on the information discovered during the game. So everything is very useful and tracked here all the time. I remind you that the distinctive icon of location is on the top of each of those boxes. And at each location you can find information regarding the resources that the contacts show here will not provide. So here it shows the type of resources that those contacts will not provide. They will not provide those resources, as you can see. You see the claims that can point to resources as a prerequisite for the story of the scandal, and the information that can completely disprove the story shown here or the involvement of the certain celebrities in them. So all this is summarized in this box here. So what is the game objective? The game objective in ScandalOh is to be the first player to unravel the scandal and therefore answer the 3 questions correctly. What story will the scandal unearth? Who is the celebrity involved in the murky affair? Which newspaper will be willing to publish the scoop? I remind you, what story, who is the celebrity, and which is the newspaper? Those 3 questions need to be answered and needs to be part of the solution to pinpoint the specific scandal. So how do you unravel the ScandalOh? In each game, only one of the 16 possible stories is a correct one. These are the 16 possible stories on the top part. And what you're trying to do is you're trying to find out which is the correct one and expose celebrity among the people associated with the story. Furthermore, in order for a celebrity to be a protagonist of a story, they need the right contact to supply them with the critical 3 resources specifically to their story as depicted on the left. You see, this story requires those resources. And the protagonist, the celebrity, which is at the center of it, needs to have access through his network or her network of contacts. In order to obtain these resources, the celebrity will have to establish a network of contacts, and in the connections area, on the bottom part, you'll find how this is going to be proven, if this is going to be proven easy for you to pinpoint or not. Basically, what you need to do is you need to observe the existing connections, discredit some, find out what is the clues that you're receiving, and try to observe any information as it becomes clearer and clearer by each clue that you're receiving. So for example, if this was a story, let's say this is the story behind the scandal, then for this story the protagonist will need a network of contacts that will provide them with those resources. On the left, the possible protagonists to the story could be Amy Albright, Ed Enfield and Uma Unwin, because you can find them there. And for instance, let's say that it's Amy. Then we have to move here and have an idea to pinpoint that Amy is the one that is involved in there based on the links of the networks that they can supply with these correct resources in order to be the ones of the scandal. So the marked lines over here show an example of possible networks of contacts established by our protagonist. So you'll have to pinpoint where that celebrity, if that's, for example, let's say it was Ed Enfield, he's drawing his resources from, and it could be 1 step ahead or 2 steps ahead, or if you get information to cross out a link, then it could not be via this side or needs to go from the other side, etc. This is part of the game itself, actually. Keep in mind that the celebrities, that they are not the protagonists of the story, they are not the center of the scandal, can also act as liaisons for the network of contacts of other celebrities. For example, it could be that Ed Enfield is not the protagonist, but he can act as liaison to move to the left and then extend the network of contacts furthermore. Keep in mind that a contact may provide more than one resource to the story of the scandal. The higher the difficulty of the scandal chosen, the more complex a network of contacts can be. So you can end up with circling more than one of those three or one of those three resources, depending on the story. Now let's talk about the game setup. First, you start by giving every player a tracking sheet, a player screen, a scandal solving token, which again I remind you is this one, double-sided. So one of those, one screen, one solving token, and of course what you do next is you place the offer tokens and the query tokens in the center of the table for everyone to be able to reach easily. You choose a scandal from the scandal section at the end of the rulebook, or from the ScandalOh app for mobile devices, which is a free app that accompanies the game and you can find online for free and download for iOS or Android. And without looking at the cards fronts, you set aside the cards specified by the scandal according to the unique card numbers of their backs. These cards will form the deck and they are the only ones that you will need to use during the game. You return the remaining cards to the game box. You're not going to be using them for the rest of the game and the specific scandal solving attempt, and the cards are contained in the game deck will have everything that you need without doubt to provide the unique answers to solve and win the game. So for example, you can the section with the scandal selection at the end can say that you pick up card 50, card 16, card 49, card 250 and card 125, etc, etc, etc. And once you put all these cards together, of course you select them from those decks without looking at the front, just from the backs, because the number is depicted at the back, and then you pre-construct the deck for which will be associated with this scandal that you're playing at the moment. You shuffle the final game deck and you deal 7 cards to each player. Then you place the remaining cards at the side to form the game deck in the center of the table within everyone's reach. You place the newspaper dispenser, which is this one, next to it, and then you leave some room next to it for a face-up discard pile. So on the token, if it's going to be this one or another one, I don't know, you're going to have a face-down discard pile, and next to it you're going to have a face-up discard pile. The starting player of the round will be the player that has been the protagonist of the biggest scandal, and this player places a starting player marker on the table in front of them. I think, by the way, this should be the starting player marker now that I think of it, and there will be one more token for the newspaper dispenser. Then we're ready to start the game. So what's the turn order and the overview of the game flow? ScandalOh is played over several rounds, with each player taking a turn during the round and continuing in counterclockwise fashion. Each round starts with the starting player of that round, and each player's turn is divided into 3 phases. You have the inquiry, you have the offer, and then you have the exchange. And at the end of each round, when all players have played their turn, the following phases take place: the solution phase, and if the game continues, if no one has solved the game, the discard phase, so that we can move to the next round. So let's have a couple of words for each of those phases respectively. The inquiry. The active player must request out loud information regarding 3 different references. The possible references are the characters. This includes the celebrities: Amy Albright, Ed Enfield, Uma Unwin, Ike Intelman, and Owen Orlovsky, as well as the contacts: Berenice Berwick, Fred Fuchs, Jerry Jetty, Jill Jarrett, Kate Keane, Leslie Lawson, Matt Murden, Norbert Newley, Tim Tax, and Vivian Vance. The newspapers is another reference, which could be the Global Sentinel, the Liberty Gazette, the Patriot Daily, and the Chronicle. The city locations that we find at the back of the player screen, which could be the Social Club, the Industrial Zone, the Financial District, the slums, and the Harbor. And again, just to show you which ones are which, these are here. This is, for example, the Harbor. This is the Social Club. This is the Industrial Zone. This is the a financial district, the slums, and yeah, we talked about the harbor already. So these are depicted, as I said previously, behind your player screen respectively. A player can therefore request information of any combination of these three references. Some possible inquiries could include 3 characters, 2 characters and a newspaper, a character, a newspaper and a location, 2 locations and a newspaper, among others. So for example, they can say that I request information about, for example, the harbor, Global Sentinel, and Ed Enfield, or about Amy Albright, Ed Enfield, and Ike Intelman. So you can make a selection depending on what you're trying to extract. On the interface of the player screens, you'll find information that could help you decide on which references to inquire about during your inquiry phase and what makes sense for you depending on the state that you are. It includes what you can find in each location, what contacts provide that resource, etc. And again, as a reminder to show you that all this valuable information can be found within the player screen, and it's very, very useful for us in order to help us to determine what type of information we are requesting out loud. The active player can use the board and the inquiry tokens to pinpoint the references they are requesting information about. So for example, you can say that I'm requesting information about, I don't know, the Chronicle, about Uma Unwin, and about Owen Orlowski. And you can use those tokens to pinpoint clearly on the player board what you're requesting information about. Now, starting with the player sitting to your right, you're going to move into the offer phase. So the offer phase. We start with the player sitting to the right of the active player and following counterclockwise order. And the non-active players choose from their hands the cards they would like to offer in exchange, so that they are selected from the active player. The only condition to offering cards is that it must contain at least one of the requested references. A player is not allowed to offer cards that do not contain any of the requested references. For example, if a player is offering a card that does not contain anything of those three, for example, it contained information about Ike Intelman, I don't know, the Patriot Daily, and the Harbor, or the Financial District, and none of those is within what the player has requested, then you are not allowed to offer it. So it is very clear that they're trying to make an offer so that they are selected from the active player, so that they can exchange information with them. A player therefore is offering cards, and offering a card is not an obligation. Each non-active player places their cards they would like to exchange face down on the table and then place an offer token on top. An offer token would be one of those. That offer token must show the sum of the information values for all of the cards included in their offer, and once declared, the decisions are final and cannot be modified. So this is the second phase, the offer. All other players start offering something so that they can be selected from the active player. Then we move to the exchange, the third phase. Once all players have made their offers, the active player decides who to exchange cards with. They may exchange cards with as many players as they please. The active player must give each chosen player cards from their hand, regardless of their references, that sum up to a total amount of information points equal to or greater than the amount that the offer has on top of the pile. So if the player on my right, for example, is offering something with a total number of 4, I will need to select from my cards something that is equal or higher than 4, so I can select those two. I could select, for example, those three, which again, they're 4. It could be even higher if I want to. And the idea would be that I'm trying to give them something back with at least equal value of information, at least numerically. Keep in mind that it's not allowed to negotiate for only part of what was offered. Exchanges occur all at once, and the active player cannot exchange cards received from exchanges during the same round. So you have to pick wisely who you want to trade with. After the exchanges have been completed, the players record their information from their cards received on their tracking sheets and keep the cards to their respective hands accordingly, hidden from other players. After this, the turn passes to the next player to the right to become the active player. If and only if none of the players offers to exchange the active player anything in return, then the active player may draw 3 cards from the game deck, and again, if the deck runs out, we'll come to the end of this explanation video to tell what happens. Once this has been completed, it will be again the next player's turn as normal. It is only at the end of the round, when all players have made an inquiry, that the players have the chance to unravel the scandal in the solution phase. Then, once every player has made an inquiry, at the end of this round we can have the solution phase. All players take their scandal solving token. They must decide if they want to place the token on the table showing its red side up, which is this one, or showing the yellow side up, which means they're trying to unravel the scandal. Once they have made up their mind, they will secretly place the token on the table, covering it with their hands, and simultaneously reveal what they're trying to do for this round. When all players are ready, all solving tokens are revealed at the same time, and the players that chose to unravel the scandal must then circle on their tracking sheet their guesses of the scandal story, the celebrity of the embroiled in it, and the newspaper that is willing to publish it. Remember the key 3 pieces of information needed to solve the scandal and expose it. It is not necessarily to know the network of contacts to solve the game, but you have to know the 3 things mentioned before. After this, one by one, the players that decided to solve the scandal will check the solution in the solution section of the rulebook at the end. The player must not reveal their guesses nor the solution. If any of the other players guessed all of the scandal details, story, celebrity, and newspaper correctly, the game ends and they are proclaimed winners. If none of the players guessed correctly, the players that try to solve the scandal are eliminated from the game and their cards are revealed to the players still in game. After being publicly examined, the cards are placed face up on the second discard pile, which is the revealed card pile. Then a new solution phase begins, and when none of the players chose to guess the solution, the game continues with the next round normally as before. If only one player is left in the game ends. If you use a ScandalOh app for mobile devices, players may check the solution in the app. Any players that guessed correctly in the same round, regardless of the order in which they guessed the solution of the game, will share the victory. Those who did not guess correctly are not eliminated from the game. The app does not show the solution to the scandal to the people who checks, just that it's not correct if it's not correct. However, as a penalty, these players are not allowed to participate in the next solution phase. If the game is continuous, a discard phase takes place as normal. So what's the discard phase? All players still in the game must discard cards from their hands until their hands are each down to 3. Then, discarded cards are placed face down in the newspaper dispenser, and the starting player then passes the starting player marker to the player on their left. The new starting player is now responsible for dealing 4 cards from the game deck, one by one to each player still in the game, in order to replenish their hands back to 7 cards. Once again, if the game deck runs out, you have to follow the same sequence. So what you do when the game deck runs out is you take all the cards in the newspaper dispenser and shuffle them. Well, you place the top 3 cards face up on the table, revealing the information. After publicly being examined, those cards are being discarded on the second discard pile, which is the reveal card pile with the cards facing up. And in this way, all the players still in the game receive additional information. The rest of the cards that were face down are shuffled with together, and they create again a new deck so that the game can continue. The game comes with a 2-player variant, which has some minor setup modifications. Basically, one of them being that the cards are examined are not placed in the player's hands, but both players look at the cards received and they make notes they wish on the tracking sheet and some other minor details. I'm not going to go into detail now. There is also the solo mode, which requires the application. Remember that it plays from 1 to 6 players, but for 1 player you require the solo, the app. But you can also use the app with multiplayer games so that there is no player elimination, and actually that's a good way to keep being involved in the game and not stay away until the rest of the people finish. So this is how the game plays. It has a similar philosophy with the awkward guess, but it goes on a more deep, more interesting and more perplexed level, which makes it even more fascinating. Not to mention the theme is marvelous as well. So the next thing that we need to do is we need to make a display, and I'm going to break down some of the game types and how they are used on our tracking sheet accordingly. We have the story cards. The information found on these cards will help you determine the story behind the scandal. You can record the data provided by these cards in the stories area on your tracking sheet. So you have cards like this one, this one or that one. These are all examples of story cards. These kinds, like this one, disprove specific celebrities as the protagonists of certain stories. This one, for example. This disproves specific story, and this disproves specific celebrities. So this celebrity, which is Ed Enfield, cannot be part of being the protagonist in a scandal for this story. But you could have a complete whole story being disproven as the one in the scandal. So this type of story cannot be, for example, part of our solution respectively. You can also have this one. If you discard all the possible protagonists of a story, you may then discard that story as the one behind the scandal as well. But here you can see that, for example, this protagonist, which is Amy Albright, cannot be the protagonist, the celebrity cannot be the protagonist of those two stories. So this is a story, this is a story. She cannot be the protagonist. This story cannot be in our scandal overall altogether. This protagonist cannot be part of this story, for example. So specific celebrities can be disproven as protagonists for certain stories, as you can see here. And then you have this type of cards. These kinds show claims of a certain resource being one of the requirements for the story of the scandal. During the game you'll always find both claims 1 and 2 of the 3 resources required by the story behind the scandal, but watch out, you might also find claims that point out to other resources. So it shows here specifically information about the claims of a specific resource, which in this case is this one. Then you can have the contact cards. These cards provide information regarding the network of contacts that the celebrities have established to access the resources they need. You can record the data provided by these cards in the connections area of your tracking sheet respectively. For example, you can have this type of card. These kinds eliminate a direct link between two adjacent characters, in this case Jill Jarrett and Ike Intelman. If a celebrity and a specific contact are not connected in any way, then that contact cannot have participated in any of the stories that involve that celebrity. So this is direct information. These kinds dismiss a contact from the network of contacts of the celebrity whose initials are crossed out, like here. These kinds, like this one, reveal that the newspapers indicated are investigating those contacts. So for example, here the Chronicle, which is the icon for the Chronicle newspaper, is investigating those two contacts respectively. The more newspapers that follow a contact, the more likely that contact has provided a resource to the story. But watch out, you may also find out contacts being investigated by newspapers who have not participated in the scandal, so this is not a determination of such. Then you can have cards like this one. These kinds dismiss specific resources from being provided to the story by certain contacts, like this one for example. And keep in mind that a contact can remain in a network even if they have no resources to provide. So that doesn't mean that those two, if they cannot provide any resources, they cannot be part of the network. Last but not least, we have the press cards. These cards provide information about the interests of different newspapers and which one is most likely to publish the scandal itself. The data they provide is recorded in the newspapers area of your tracking sheet. For example, you have these cards here. that these cards show two newspapers that are not interested in publishing stories about a specific celebrity. So the celebrity here you see, of course, is Ike Intelman, and those two newspapers will never publish a story about Ike Intelman. I remind you that you need to identify the correct newspaper as well, so that you have a story. Then you can have cards like this one. These other kinds show a certain newspaper is not interested in publishing stories of a certain type, and the types are indicated here, as explained before and as summarized behind your player screen. And the last are these kinds of cards. These kinds of cards show claims of a specific newspaper interested to publish a scandal, in this case 3. Finding all 3 claims, 1, 2 and 3 about a newspaper, confirms that the newspaper will be the one to publish the scandal. But watch out, you might also find claims pointing towards newspaper that won't be the ones publishing the scandal as well. Now let's see one tracking sheet in action from ScandalOh. So, for example, some stories like this one, this first one, and this, the third one, have already been discarded because no celebrity can be the protagonist. You see? No celebrity can be the protagonist, so the whole story is discarded. And here, no celebrity can be the protagonist, so the whole story is discarded. At this point in the game, one of these stories is most likely the correct one because more claims have been found pointing to these resources than any others. One is those one, you can see too many claims here, or that one also has a lot of claims, circled with green. And then you have this one, which also has several claims circled in green. So this, that and that have the most claims found pointing to their resources, so it is most likely that one of those is the correct one. Then, for example, in the lower contact section, these 3 characters have received the most attention from the newspaper, and they might be involved in the scandal by providing their resources. And you can see that one of them is Tim Tax, received more attention than the rest from the newspapers. The same goes for Norbert Newley. 1, 2 newspapers have indicated attention. And the same goes for Vivian Vance. Since they have the most attention from the newspaper, it most probably are the ones that they might be involved in the scandal, but not 100% sure up to this point. And then, these are the newspapers at the bottom. These 2 newspapers, the Global Sentinel and the Patriot Daily, seem to be the most willing to publish the scandal, as you can see, compared to the rest. You should always contrast the information received from the claims you find in ScandalOh, and although many will point to the right solution of the game, there are other ones that they are simply there to divert your attention away from the actual news. So last but not least, there are some advice that we can give you about ScandalOh throughout the sessions we had so far here, and one of those is that the game is a game of logic and association. If you use your deductive skills, you will be able to extract more information from the cards as a whole than if you focus on them individually. Don't hesitate to exchange information at the beginning of the game. As the game progresses and you have well-founded suspicions, selectively hide information you find most critical from your adversaries. In any case, do not stop exchanging cards with them, or will be impossible to solve the scandal before anyone else. If you always return the same information that was exchanged with you, your adversaries will not be interested in exchanging information in the future with you. Try to find a balance between the 2 options. In order to increase your chances of exchanging information, which is something that you should aim for with your adversaries, try to keep cards in your hand with different and varied references. When you make inquiries, be thoughtful in your choice of references and ask carefully what you want to inquire. If you always request information regarding the same references, the chances is that you will receive cards that you will already have seen, and that's the most possible scenario. Inquiring about celebrities and contacts is the most direct way to get information, but don't overlook the other options. The interests of the newspapers will help you rule out many of the stories. Ask regularly for information about the locations. There's some very juicy information in cards whose only reference is a location. All information on the cards can be transferred to your tracking sheets by either crossing out options or circling them. Each card shows what to do. Be careful when you take notes not to confuse yourself or make mistakes. Making a mistake could ruin your future inquiries because it will lead you down the wrong path. And during the game you'll find and hear rumors represented as claims. The more difficult the game is, the more of those you'll find. If most of them are pointing to the same direction, then you are most likely on the right track. Nevertheless, consider all aspects of the research: the story, the protagonist, celebrity, and their network of contacts, the newspaper that will publish the story, and make sure information is consistent between all sources. That's your job after all. The key to linking the celebrity to a story is within the connections area of your tracking sheet. Study it carefully. This task is easier when you focus on the celebrities one by one. What network can, for example, Amy Albright create? Does Owen Orlonsky have access to the resource Coercion? Has Uma Unwin collaborated with that one specific suspicious contact? And things like that. Remember that if you find all three claims that point to a newspaper publishing the news, then it will surely be the one to publish it. And you find 1/3 of your overall solution. If that's the case, pay close attention to the newspaper interests. It will make you have more easy tasks following the rest of the solution. If you run out of tracking sheets, of course, you can download some more from the website of Megacorping Games and you can print them at home. So there you have it. This is all you need to know about ScandalOh. This is a great design on top of a previously acclaimed and very fun game, Awkward Guess. I think this is even takes the fun and the logical assumption and conclusion process a step further. The theme is very fun, trying to pinpoint celebrity to specific scandals. So there you have it, everything you need to know about the game. So let's wrap it up. Okay, I have to admit I'm a bit biased because I really loved Awkward Guess. So I was expecting another successful hit from them, and that was no exception here with ScandalOh. ScandalOh has a very unique theme. You are a newspaper reporter, you're trying to pinpoint a scandal, find the correct evidence to link things together so that you can tell your story, but at the end you need to have also an appropriate newspaper or a magazine to publish your story. So this game follows the same philosophy, I would say, like Awkward Guess, but I would suppose that it builds on top of it, bringing more things into the mix, bringing more wonderful things to discover, to conclude, to solve the mystery and get to the bottom of this. It is wrapped with a, I would say, very aesthetically pleasing theme, writing a scandal, a newspaper article on a scandal, but backing it with evidence and linking things together is something very interesting. We've seen it in many Hollywood movies and read many novels about it, and now it's the time to play it on a board game. But you'll have to use your mind, think carefully and use your best attributes to tie things together in order to be able to solve the case and publish it, of course, on an appropriate newspaper or magazine. So follow the link at the description below. You'll find the Kickstarter page of Megacorping Games. They were brilliant, and I'm really hands down, they were brilliant on this first game that they did with Awkward Guess. We had a blast playing it. It also offers a lot of fun. It offers also a tremendous app that will give you the opportunity, same like here, to include people and not having to have player elimination if someone tries to solve the case with the wrong approach. They will still be in the game, so that's really nice. But also it offers endless replayability, lots and lots of fun, lots of thinking, lots of sharpening your mind and trying to find the solution to it, and a great game overall. So follow the link and find out more about ScandalOh.